Hi, my name is Sally Breckenridge and I'm the author of iWeaveIt. I get a lot of questions about Rigid Heddle looms, and so I thought I would do a short video today to show you how to use the Rigid Heddle loom with a weaving program that talks about shafts and treadles when a Rigid Heddle talks about holes and slots. So I've borrowed a Rigid Heddle loom. It's an older shocked loom. I've put on a 3-inch warp, and I had to add something here because the beam is so wide that it kept flopping around. So hopefully I can show you a little bit about how to use iWeaveIt and with the Rigid Heddle loom. This is not a tutorial on Rigid Heddle weaving. I'm pretty new at it. The first thing we're going to do is start iWeaveIt. It's this one with a W here, and it sometimes starts in the browser, and when it does do that, pick Browse, then pick on my iPad, iWeaveIt, and you'll get to the patterns that are under your iWeaveIt folder. There's also a folder called Samples, and it has samples of Rigid Heddle patterns that you can use to get started with. We'll go back to here and open this Rigid Heddle demo file. So it opens there. I use a pencil with my iPad because otherwise my hand gets in the way and you can't see what's happening. So this helps do that. You'll notice here that we have these are the shafts, and that's the threading for the warp, and I'm calling it shaft 1 and shaft 2. Shaft 1 is going to represent your holes, shaft 2 represents the slots. And the representation can be either way, it's just what you want. So, but we're using holes for 1 and slots for 2. This is the tie-up. The tie-up is how the threading relates to the treadling. And over here we have the treadling. The treadling is how you're going to lift things if you had a regular loom. But since you have a Rigid Heddle, it's up or down. So we've decided to make treadle 1 as up and treadle 2 as down. So in this case I'm weaving just with plain blue, and then I switch to plain yellow, and I get this type of a design. And so holes are equivalent to shaft 1 and slots are equivalent to shaft 2. Rigid Heddle up is equivalent to treadle 1, and Rigid Heddle down is equivalent to treadle 2. The blues are in the holes, the yellows are in the slots. If I lift the shaft or the heddle to the up position, here, up, then you see all of the blue threads on the top, the holes. These are the ones that we call shaft 1. If I put the heddle in the lower position, you see all the yellow threads. These are the ones I put in the slots, and we called those shaft 2. When you have the heddle in the lower position, we are using treadle 2, and the slots and the threads in shaft 2 show. If we use treadle 1, then you see the blue threads on top. Right now I'm going to continue weaving with the blue threads. My last warp was an upper one. These were all on the top. We'll beat it down a little bit. Now I'm going to Move it down to the lower. So now the yellow threads are on the top, and we're going to pull our yarn through, and you can see that the yellow ones are on top. Beat it, move it to the upper position. Now the blue threads in shaft 1 are on top, that's treadle 1. Again, I beat it. Now you'll notice that for the most part you are seeing blue. You don't see the yellow pick, and that's because it's predominantly blue. And that's especially true because I'm using a knitting yarn, and the knitting yarn right now is under a lot of tension, but when I release the warp from the loom, then it will relax and these will close in even more. So let's weave a few strokes with the yellow yarn. And I'll put the yellow in. Beat it. So now you're seeing that the yellow is now the predominant color because we're weaving with the weft. So now let's go through creating a new draft. I pick new open files, and I'm going to pick, well, I'm on the iPad in iWeaveIt, and I want to create a new draft. And you'll notice it came up with 8 shafts and 8 treadles, but that's not what we want. So go back to the settings and pattern setup, and set it to 2 shafts and 2 treadles, and accept that. Now we have what we want. To edit, tap on the threading, and we'll just use the same colors. And I'm going to do it an easy way, which is to just fill in the blanks first, or all the same color, and then now go in and put the yellow on shaft 2. And that's a quick way to do a alternating threading. The tie-up is always on the diagonal 1 and 2, and that's all. It's always the same. For the treadling, we're going to do, we'll just fill in the blue again. Only this time we're going to change it so that the yellow threads are on the same treadle as they're on the slots, so that this one is lifted. So we're going to put it on 2. And when that happens, you get horizontal stripes. Now let's add some more picks. Okay, and then this time though, we're going to put them onto shaft 1. Let's move that down so it kind of lines up. And shaft 1, and we're going to put the yellow here, and you'll notice it's opposite what it was. So when the blue warp threads are up, then we use the yellow warp, and we'll continue to do that. And you see that in that case you get vertical stripes. So when we're using the warp thread up as blue, and that's in the holes, then, and when we weave it with the same color, then we're going to get horizontal stripes. If we have the warp thread yellow that's on the slots, and we weave it with blue, which is opposite, we weave it with the blue, then we're going to get vertical stripes. That's down here. You get the vertical ones we weave opposite, and these are weaving the same. So let's look at the weaving. Now I'm going to demonstrate weaving stripes. The treadle 1 is up so that we see shaft 1, and I'm going to weave with the color that's up. So I'm going to weave with the blue and put it down. Now in the lower position, treadle 2 and shaft 2, I'm going to weave with the yellow. Yellow is up. So you'll notice that I now have horizontal stripes weaving across. So when I wove with the holes, shaft 1, and the treadle is up, shaft treadle 1, then I weave with the same color that's showing on the top and the opposite for the yellow. But let's do this opposite. When the blue threads are up, treadle 1, shaft 1, then I'm going to weave with the yellow. And notice I've switched colors. Okay. The yellow is up, shaft 2, treadle 2, and I'm going to weave with the blue. Okay, so now we can take a look at this, and you can see that I'm getting vertical stripes. So when you weave the same color as the yarn that's on the top, you will get horizontal stripes. If you weave the opposite color, you get vertical stripes. Now let's look at one of the samples to see how you can change it to do your own designs. I'm going to go over to Open Files, and we want to save it. This time we'll say no, and I'll open Samples, Rigid Heddle, and let's pick this plaid one. I'm going to zoom in, make it small so you can see what I've got. It's a plaid like you'd see on a tartan, and it's spread out, and you can do that. Now, if you pick this button here, you only see one repeat of the design, so that's one repeat. The program just keeps repeating it, assuming that you want to do that. Let's go over to learn a little bit about how I can change the colors. One way, which we saw in the other one, was to pick another color. Let's say I wanted to make it blue, then I can just tap in this mode in blue. This is the mark mode, and that just changes things. Select mode is selection. If you're selecting with the pencil, you just hold it down and drag. Can't remember anyway. With your finger, you hold it down until you see the red box, and then you drag, and that'll give you the pencil. And if I have selected all of those colors, I can change it to something else, like this color. So now it's all that color. Another way I can change colors is to go over to the color setup. The colors with the stars are the ones that are currently being used in your pattern. So let's select the green, and instead of green, I want to make it, we'll make it pink. So it's pink, and then we have to set this lighter to get the pink color. And then if I pick set color, it changed that green to the pink. When I dismiss this, you can see that now you have pink there. So that's another way. A third way that you can do it is with the add-on that's called Color and Weave. It's in your design tools, and you have choices of doing A and B kind of sequence, or you can create your own sequence like you had a plaid. So I'll turn that on and we'll just make up our own sequence. I have to use the keyboard to do that. So I'm just going to type in A, B, 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 C, C, C. And you can have anything you want up to 3 colors. These 3 are the ones you had. So let's make it blue, yellow, purple, and we'll make a plaid and do both. And we create this color and weave. And now we have used those things. You can see it's repeated 3 times. So that's something that you can do to quickly make your patterns. Another thing that's good for Rigid Heddle is the project manager, where you set it up. You can put your set in it. In the pattern I was using 12. Oops, 12. And use PPI, we'll use 12. Waist is 36. Well, that's kind of a lot for a Rigid Heddle. We'll use 18. Shrinkage is 10. If you're using a knitting yarn, you're going to have to make your shrinkage a lot more. This is how wide you're putting it on there. This is just using the pattern. So we're going to use the pattern. It says it's 3.5 inches based on what I've put in there. And we'll put on 2 yards, just because that's a nice number. That's the only reason. Okay, so now we're going to go over to see our calculations, and it will tell you how many warps you need and how many wefts you need and how much yardage you're going to need to do on your yarn to do this project. So that's a really convenient, useful thing to do. Some yarns you can also do sets. You can go in here and you can give your yarns a name. This tells you what are your color order. This tells you heddle count. That isn't really useful for a Rigid Heddle loom. That's for a regular loom. This is also something that's useful. Default settings. One of the settings in here is the number of shafts. So if you want to do 2 shaft projects, then you set that not to 82, but 2 and 2. And now when you pick a new pattern, it'll use that number for the number of shafts. That's it about for iWeaveIt with Rigid Heddle weaving.